Welcome to SurveyBooker Sessions. Tune in to hear from people working in a range of industries and roles to provide you ideas that you can take away and use in your own business. I'm your host, Matt Nally, the founder and director of SurveyBooker, which is the leading CRM and survey management system for surveyors. On this week's episode, we have Steve Lees from the RICS. So thank you for coming on today.
Hi, Matt. Thanks very much. Yeah, so my official job title is Senior Specialist for Residential Survey. So I've only recently joined RICS at the end of March of this year in a role to focus on residential survey. My previous career was actually as a surveyor, so I qualified after getting a degree in building surveying in the late 90s, which seems a million miles away, but then qualified in 2001, became chartered and worked for some SME businesses in the residential sector before working for two of the larger corporates, whilst also supporting RICS on a few papers, including the cladding, valuation papers, Japanese knotweed, and all the joys, and then officially been appointed to sort of lead the residential specialism and engaging with the sector. So thank you very much for the invite, and good to speak to your listeners.
No, it's great to have you on. So I suppose for anyone that's wondering what we're going to cover today, and we'll sort of touch again on what sort of your background in a second, but we'll be covering things like the sort of home survey standard requirements and I suppose the future of residential and bits and pieces like that. But I suppose before we get on to sort of topic one around the requirements of the home standard, what made you want to move from sort of working as a surveyor into this side of things?
It's a really good question. Obviously, I had a passion for property and enjoyed looking at people's houses, but also supporting others. So I had a little bit of a life event around 10 years ago where I was looking in lofts most of the day and out with the surveying equipment and providing reports. And unfortunately, and I'm over it now, but I ended up getting throat cancer. So that called for a change in direction in my career. And every cloud, I moved into sort of the audit and technical support area and customer care, and I really enjoyed that aspect of the role. So that then allowed me to go through my previous employers to become head of technical. So I was head of technical for a large corporate before I heard about the opportunity to sort of lead the RICS sector for residential survey. And I thought I've built up 20 odd years of knowledge and experience and contacts, and I think time to give something back. So it's a little bit of a sideways move into a new and exciting role. There's a few challenges and a few opportunities for our membership, and I think it really helps that I've had that experience and been out in the field and hopefully understand the challenges of our membership and hopefully the general public as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it'd be impossible to work on what we're about to discuss without that background to it, because it's you need to have that in-depth understanding of how it works and different challenges and stuff. But I'm glad that out of something like that, there's the positivity's coming. You've got the something you're sort of loving doing now, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, RICS, are very forward thinking, and there's a lot on the pad to be dealt with, which I'm sure we'll discuss.
Definitely. So I suppose coming into then the first thing we want to discuss around home standards and requirements. I suppose the background is it came out originally in 2019. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So previous to that, home surveys had lots of documentations around different types of residential home surveys that were all amalgamated together from some research that was done in 2018, but officially the document was completed in 2019, but was effective in 2021. And you might think that's quite a big lead in time for any sort of document. But if we think back, the standard came into force around the period of COVID. So in effect, surveyors weren't actually looking in people's houses in that during that time, so it made sense to make it effective in 2021 to allow businesses to change their business model to reflect the home survey standard. So that's when it became effective, and the first thing that landed on my desk when I joined RICS was to start the review to bring together version 2. So that's what I'm in the midst of at the moment.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I remember that sort of extension to the deadline coming in. I think there was quite a few challenges at the time. You had a mix of initially people might have been off on furlough because the businesses couldn't operate, and then suddenly it was the busiest time the market had ever seen, and
Yeah.
there was no time to review new things. So it was a very interesting time, I think.
Yeah, really interesting. I say, actually being involved with the sector then, that there was a lot of nervousness around how the market would recover, and as you quite rightly say, it was a little bit of a boom time, and with a new standard to introduce as well.
How's it gone? Do you think this sort of rollout? And I suppose we can come on to what the requirements of it in a minute. But from your initial review of things, has it been a successful rollout, or
Yeah,
there?
I think with every standard that's created into the market, there will be mixed views from the membership. But I think it was important to have all the documents in one central place. I think the key thing to take away, it created a minimum standard for all aspects of the service that surveyors provide. So it is a minimum standard. People can build and grow from that. So not having to complete a formulaic home survey, as long as it adheres to the standard, they can build the product that they want. People starting to use different technologies such as drones and incorporating data. But as long as it meets the minimum standard, we're encouraging people to either use the RICS products, but equally they can build their own as well. So general feedback is it's landed pretty well. Obviously, you'll speak to different people who will have a different view because there has been a change, particularly introducing the levels of surveys, levels 1, 2 and 3, which is a change from the old pilots of a condition report, a home buyer report or a building survey. So a little bit of bedding in, I would say, but I spoke to the property ombudsman and people from the dispute resolution service, and they feel it works really well rather than having lots of documents. To have this one central Bible for regulated firms and members to work to seems to have landed pretty well.
No, good. I think the key with anything though is it's the idea that anything's going to be a silver bullet and be perfect first time is unrealistic. Everything's about continual improvement, and I suppose
Absolutely.
we'll come on to what are the where's the review side of things coming on a bit later on. But
Yep.
I suppose in terms of starting with the basics, do we cover what are the requirements around the
Yeah,
home survey
yeah. As
standard?
I say, it should be seen as a framework. So it's a professional standard which our members and regulated firms must adhere to. There's a series of musts within the report. So a must means that a member or a regulated firm must adhere to this. So it creates a framework for regulated firms to work to. So, for instance, creating a framework for what needs to go into a terms of engagement, what the levels of surveys are, how we liaise with our clients. So before, that area is pretty open, but now we encourage our members, or the standard asks our members to speak to clients before we undertake the survey to make sure they're happy with the product, and also to speak to them after we've completed the inspection to make sure the client really fully understands the content of the report. It also sets out to our members that they must have knowledge of the locality and the type of property that they're undertaking. So there's a lot more available information now, as you know, Matt. We can look online to look at properties before we buy. So if the surveyor in question doesn't feel they've got the knowledge or experience in that particular area, the standard portrays to them that they shouldn't undertake that survey if they haven't got the competence. So it's all about putting that really good framework around to make sure both the consumer and the surveyor are safe in the work that they do.
Interesting. Just interesting. We had we've just recorded another episode around when you can do level threes, and I'd be interested to get your take on this. Then I suppose is it a case of if you can't you couldn't do the level three if you couldn't do the level two, i.e. your knowledge isn't, you're not competent for that type of property, but provided you were competent to do a level two on a property, you could do a level three. Is that a
Yeah, I
fair?
think it all comes down to continual professional development.
Yeah.
At the moment, um, the home survey standard is self-assertion, so the person inspecting needs to have that knowledge and experience, which can only be gained by being mentored or being actually exposed to these properties and building up that knowledge base. Level threes are the highest level of inspection that we do undertake. So they do need specialist knowledge. They need to be able to provide the correct level of advice. So again, we're all continually developing in our profession. So yeah, people undertaking level threes must have that level of experience and knowledge, which only can be get by learnt experience.
If you are like a newer surveyor to the industry,
Yeah.
so you've maybe qualified, you've been doing level twos for quite a while. How do you determine confidently that you've reached the sort of, I suppose, level of experience and competency to start doing level threes? So what is there a way of sort of feeling confident with that transition process to know that you're not at risk of falling foul of the standards?
Yeah, I think the key is to work with your regulated firm. In my experience, good regulated firms really put good controls around the work that's been undertaken. At the end of the day, it will affect their PI if mistakes are made. So um, it's always important for senior members within the regulated firm to make sure they've got the right controls in place, checking the work, exposing the lesser qualified surveyor to these works companies. Inspections are absolutely great, reflecting on the report before it's sent. In my own experience, I didn't do level threes for 3 or 4 years after I came out of university and got qualified through the APC. Did plenty of accompanied inspections and then started to do basic properties and then building up to more complex properties. And there are people that need to do further CPD for sort of historic properties as well, or bespoke one-off grand designs types.
Yeah, true. Yeah, yeah. There'd be some that I suppose are new to everyone that turns up to it. A very bespoke type of property. One thing you mentioned there, and I've seen this come up as debate a number of times before, is that pause for reflection before you send the report. There isn't, I suppose, a specified length of time that you must wait, and the reason I've seen this as a debate is, is it okay to offer same day turnaround or 24-hour turnaround on a report having done the inspection? Is there guidance on, or a sort of an idea of what counts as a suitable reflection
Yeah,
period?
it is interesting. It is covered off in the standard. So in section 3, it does actually state that the member or the regulated firm must produce an accurate and comprehensive record of the property at the time of inspection to allow for reflection before the service is delivered. So
Okay.
in my own experience, you go to the property with an absolute clear mind. You inspect the property and record what you've seen, and then you do need that period of reflection. Look at the property holistically. Look at your site notes and photographs. Make sure it's proportionate. The report's proportionate. So yes, service is important to clients, but this is probably one of the biggest purchases they're going to have in their life. So it's really important that the surveyors take a step back and reflect. And if that means delaying the report going back to the client, then so be it. We definitely encourage that period of reflection. Turnaround in terms of clients' demands in the corporate world in terms of valuations is a slightly different matter, but these can
Yeah.
be quite detailed reports, so we definitely encourage reflection.
Interesting. Is there a sort of a minimum time that's
No,
considered
we don't
reasonable?
stipulate.
No.
And again, no two properties are the same.
Yeah.
It could be a modern property with very few defects to a very large estate property that
True.
takes longer to inspect. There's a lot more potential defects and things to reflect on and proofread the report, checking site notes, etc. So yeah, no one size fits all. So yeah, we don't
That's a fair point.
put a framework around that.
No, that's a fair point. Yeah, because if it's a very new property and you genuinely can't find anything wrong, then it doesn't need days and days of reflection. Whereas a really complicated historic building might need more time, and an hour probably isn't okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
again, coming back, everybody's got different levels of experience and knowledge around
Yeah.
these properties as well.
Definitely. Okay, that's really interesting. One of the other things, and I know we sort of touched on this briefly before starting the call, is terms of engagement, and it's an interesting one. I know the standard has requirements listed in terms of what needs to be included in the in terms of personalization and the documents and so on. We see quite different, I suppose, preferences as to how people want to handle them. Whether it's a document that's got the I suppose the fields that are listed in the appendix of one of the suggestions for the terms of engagement, in terms of like name and address and quote and special instructions, etc. To other ones where it's here's a quick link to a web page and just confirm back in an email you agree. Is what's the actual requirement, I suppose, around terms and what must be achieved at the end of it?
Yeah, I think just to go back to the original point, terms terms of engagement is so important for both parties in this transaction.
Mm.
So again, as I referred to earlier, ensuring that people know that the product that they're getting is suitable for their needs. The standard, again, going back to the word must, the standard in Appendix A ensures that certain elements are included in that. So whether that be the fee, our member's name, also the format in which the report will be delivered. So again, ensuring and treating customers fairly to ensure that they absolutely know what product they're getting at the end of it and how much they're expected to pay for it, the cancellation rights, etc. The method of delivery can vary. That can be a hard copy of a wet signature, or it can be a link, as long as there's an evidence trail to keep both the regulated firm and our member safe, and the consumer, the person in the general public, safe. There's a documented record that can be electronic, or a wet signature. It just needs to adhere to the terms and conditions. That's not just home survey standard. Any professional engagement, terms of engagement are a must. That could be a very important document in the future for all parties.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think, and this is what we've discussed with customers before, is if you have a link to a web page and you just say, just confirm you're happy with that, it doesn't provide you any physical. Well, I think there's two. I understand there's two problems with it. One, it's not personalised, so it doesn't specify what the agreed fee is, and customer name and job address, all that type of stuff. But equally, you've got no document at the end of that to prove what version of terms are agreed. That web page might change over 6 to 15 years as your as legislation changes and what you want to offer changes. And so if you do have to defend yourself, you haven't got evidence of what version was actually present at the time and what was written on there.
Yeah, I think this is where the home survey standard, in terms of in this centralised Bible, is really important, because it is specific in all of the elements that should be agreed, and the subject property should be detailed, the client's name, the RICS member who's undertaking it, the fee. It's a individual terms of engagement with each individual transaction, so it should be bespoke to the property and the client. But I think the key point to take away is, if regulated firms and members follow the home survey standard appendix, they're going to be absolutely safe.
Yeah, I think that's quite a clear document, to be fair. When I've reviewed it,
Yeah.
It does stipulate what needs to be in there, and you can copy and paste that, really, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Tick off all the points are covered. Member firms are going to be absolutely safe, but it is so crucial, and it can play a part if things should go wrong in the future, or clients. Member firms can go back to clients as well to say, it was clearly stated to you, and it's all about that transparency of service. Good surveying firms have that transparent conversation, follow it up with the terms and conditions that are agreed.
Definitely. My last question on terms, you mentioned about having either an electronic or a wet signature,
Mm-hmm.
so the customer sign. Is there a time where it's acceptable not to have it signed in any way, or does that put you at risk potentially?
Yeah, I'm not legally minded, but I would say
No.
for absolute security, a signature in either of those two formats would be the minimum requirement. It just shows that it's been acknowledged. So firms might need to take legal advice on that, but I think that's definitely the safest way from my perspective.
Yeah, definitely. No, we'll be clear. It's definitely none of this is legal advice, but just general information to consider.
Thank you, Matt.
Awesome. So, I suppose in terms of standard phrases, then that gets used a lot, obviously, in different apps to help save time when writing reports, and they've obviously got value in terms of helping to put content together.
Mm-hmm.
Are there times where standard phrases aren't appropriate? And I know obviously they'd still have to be tailored. You have to adjust that standard phrase to suit the property.
Yeah.
But are there ever scenarios where that's not allowed?
It's an interesting one. This has been in time immemorial around the use of standard phrases. Now, staccato reporting using standard phrases can be called into question by the client to say, it's just a repeated. I've had a same report from the same firm. It's just get the same paragraphs are in there now. I am sitting on the fence here. I can see the value to both. So a well-structured standard phrases over key issues that are pertinent to different types of property, around referring with regard to legal or describing the element. It does keep the surveyor safe. But again, properties are bespoke, and the phrases need to be tailored to meet that property. Some people generate reports completely from scratch on a bespoke basis, which again is absolutely fine. It's all about the resultant report. Does it reflect the property? Does it give clear advice to the customer? And in terms of clear advice, we've always got to assume that people buying the property haven't got a level of knowledge around buildings and building pathology, so it needs to be read really clearly. So I think the answer is there is a place for standard phraseology. I think everybody that actually says, "Oh, I don't use standard phrases," probably has got a stock of keywords and key phrases that they actually do use. But again, it's this period of reflection. Look back. Does the phrase that's been inserted in the report actually reflect the property that's been seen? Over reliance on standard phrases, i.e., you start to put phrases in around cavity wall tie failure when there's no cavities. That just is not acceptable. So, period of reflection. Do the output phrases reflect the property that's been seen?
Yeah, I think that's fair, because ultimately what you don't want to do as a consumer is read something that feels cut and paste, because then you lose the value, and then there's the frustration, and you don't get the good reviews out the back of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so handle with care, I think would be my summary of that.
Perfect. I think that ties in nicely to my next question, which is when can you and can't you recommend further inspection? And the reason I feel like it ties in is you obviously will see standard phrases for recommended inspections and so on, and so on. Where is it okay to say yes, we're not suitable to advise on this, you need to get a further inspection, and when is it too much just in there as a caveat to cover and it's not appropriate?
Yeah, I think surveyors, due to CPD, their training, should be going out and advising purchasers on all elements of the property. Now, one that gets raised quite often is around services. We are, and we'll hopefully talk about it shortly, we're looking to review the home survey standard. But one of the criticisms of reports is that the customer gets a condition rating of 3 for people that use the condition rating system, and there's no apparent defect to the electrical installation. It's just the fact that it hasn't been tested recently. So I do get that frustration from the consumer around that part. Other areas of building pathology, we'd expect our surveyors to appraise the element and provide commentary, particularly on level 2s and level 3s, where we go into further advice and detail, and only recommend special advice when absolutely necessary. So structural issues where a clear diagnosis can't be made on site may require a structural engineer to provide that. We're also looking currently at the moment around the diagnosis of damp. We brought out, working with others, a joint positioning statement. So we're encouraging our members now to look at the building. If there's a broken down pipe, for instance, and a wall hasn't been pointed recently and there's damp in that area, then we're doing the pathology rather than just passing it on to a timber and damp specialist for them to make a call. We're continually encouraging our members to assess and provide reasonable advice. But yeah, services is one that's on my radar, and I think that's probably common between our membership as well. And the people I've spoken to in my limited time here have said, we probably need to review some of the areas and provide additional support and training to our members to make sure they're providing a one-stop shop rather than a list of recommended onward reports.
Yeah, because it's finding a balance. Because I suppose if you've just paid a few £100s for a report, and then it's sort of saying for a lot of areas speak to someone else, then it's ultimately going to lead to frustration.
Yeah, it can undermine the value of the report, and we need to make sure that surveys are relevant. Yeah,
definitely. This next question actually might fall under sort of the review that we're going to come on to. Because you just mentioned obviously about the services. There's one that does crop up a few times, and you see, for example, electrics or gas covered as a 3 because it's I don't know, we haven't seen a certificate to say it's tested, or we can't verify that the sticker that's on there is genuine, all that type of stuff. Is what's the right type of advice to put there? Is it a 3, or do you just put not inspected because it's we're not specialists?
Yeah. I mean, we in the standard we allow firms to create their own rating systems if needed. if the element is visual, the surveyor should be making a call there. Now, for instance, the NIC, EIC's recommendation, so that's in the world of electrical, recommend that before purchase, everybody should have an electrical report undertaken. And again, the provenance of the sticker on the consumer unit, etc. So most firms will veer towards a condition rating 3 for most of the elements. There are surveyors out there, the qualified electricians as well, or can offer that service within the package, which the sort of home survey standard allows for people to go into specialist areas. It's one area that I would like to really get under the bonnet of in the review and make sure we're providing practical advice. My own view again, is there a position to say we shouldn't rate the services? We can rate everything else around the property, but potentially do we say it doesn't carry a rated system, but here are our observations, and this is the recommended advice from GasSafe or NIC, EIC.
Yeah, I think my view is probably that might be a sensible route going forward, just because you do see a lot of comments where consumers misunderstand and they think the house is being condemned because the electrics now got a 3 and they need to rewire, and actually it's not the case. It's just saying
I think quite clear. I'm quite visual that when you look at the ratings, you're automatically attracted to the 3s and it's in red, and what do we need to do here? But I think it's definitely going to form part of the review. So it's on my pad already.
Well, interesting. I think there was one other question I was going to ask, but before I do that, should we actually cover the review and what's prompted the review of the standard, I guess, and what you're looking to, I suppose, achieve from it, and where we're looking to get to.
Yeah, it's time marches on, so it's 3 years in the making. It was quite a sea change at the time, so I think it's a really good opportunity now for us to lift the bonnet and also ask our members' view. So I've got a little bit of a 3-pronged attack in terms of we are sending out a membership questionnaire, so everybody who's an RSS professional in the residential sector will get a questionnaire, and I'd really urge members to complete that. It doesn't have to be one person from a regulated firm, it can be all of our membership, and we look at it at the whole survey incrementally. So where does it work? A bit like Goldilocks analogy, does it go too far? Is it not prescriptive enough? Is it just right? And then we go through. We're going to go through the whole current standard, and then build the review off the back of what our members say. But in parallel, we're also going out to people that have recently purchased. So we're using an external company to provide feedback from a purchase. So they might say, using your example, I found the services confusing. I really wanted to know more about schools in the area, or why wasn't this particular area covered? I'm struggling to find examples. But from that and our member questionnaire, so we've got the member questionnaire, we've got the consumer questionnaire, but I'm also looking at our own internal data and speaking to other associated bodies as well. And from that, we'll have a clear picture of what works well, where do we need to add more detail, where do we need to provide more clarity. Now, I don't want to preempt the results of that. It could be everything's fine, let's keep it as it is. It might be, we've got a bit of an issue here because in the last 3 years, the use of drone technology has risen, and there's no section around using drone technology, just using that as a particular example. We might want to look at other areas such as snagging reports for new build properties or compliance reports for new build properties. Do we need to bolster areas around the inspection of historic buildings? Example, do we need to make the levels a little bit clearer? How do we look at non-traditional properties? So there's a whole range, but I don't want to preempt what the new standard will look like. We really have got to reflect on member and general public sentiment around the standard as it stands at the moment.
Oh no, definitely don't want to put thoughts in people's minds and then they don't come up with other things. I agree with that.
I mean, membership have got some really good ideas. I've spoken to people. You can have people with different end of the spectrum. People saying we shouldn't touch services at all, to people saying we should upskill to look at services, or that middle ground of providing advice but signposting as to why we haven't provided a condition rating, or we've provided a particular condition rating.
Yeah, I think it'd be really interesting to see the results from both sides. Obviously, there's the surveyor side where this is what we find challenging to maybe understand in certain areas, and then from the consumer side, it's how do we actually receive the product, which you don't always get feedback on. Someone might say that they're generally overall happy, but not necessarily specify the services or whatever it was. So that would be helpful in terms of addressing just sort of how people generally approach things as well. Is there a time frame on the review in terms of when you're looking?
So we're looking to get the questionnaires out to membership and to general public and conclude that by the end of July. And the current date for publication for the completed project, we're looking at the end of Q1 2025. Now, depending on how big the review needs to be after the questionnaire, that may get pushed back, but it will go through the usual protocols of public consultation, and we're pulling together an expert group as well, which will involve corporate firms, SME firms, specialists in particular areas around green and retrofit, academics, legal, the usual sort of process for RICS development of a standard. So really looking forward to getting stuck into that, to be honest, Matt.
Awesome. I think that's probably a nice place to end topic 1, and we'll move into looking at the future of residential in a moment. So join us for topic 2 on there. But certainly, I'd say if you've got feedback about the standard, whether it's just you love it or there's certain bits you want to change, it's definitely worth providing that feedback, or anything you do want addressed can't be.
Look out. I would say to members that are listening, look out for the questionnaire. It's your opportunity to have your voice. We've kept it to sort of a reasonable amount of questions, and there's multiple choice, but there's also white space to put a view in there. We're looking for people to be constructive and tell us what works and what doesn't work. So should be landing in people's inboxes imminently.
Definitely. Well, it's a nice point to end on, is outline the problem, but also the solution that you think should go with it, and that will help drive the change.
Absolutely.
Much more effectively.